My name is Myra Wells, and I was 28 years old when I flew 3,000 miles to attend a wedding I was never supposed to enter. That sounds dramatic. I know. Believe me. I wish I could dress it up and say there was a simple misunderstanding. Some poor intern forgot to print the right guest list. Or maybe my invitation got lost somewhere between Boston and Los Angeles. Things happen. Mail disappears. Emails go to spam. Wedding planners lose their minds. I have worked enough weddings to know that even rich people with six-figure budgets can forget where they put the seating chart. But this was not a mistake. I learned that the hard way, standing in the marble lobby of the Grand Belmont Hotel in Boston, wearing a dusty rose dress I had bought because I wanted to look respectful, not desperate. The kind of dress that says, I came in peace. Not, I flew across the country to be publicly humiliated by people who share my last name. The lobby looked like money had gotten bored and decided to become a building. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. White roses filled tall glass vases. A string quartet played near the entrance. Because apparently nothing says true love like four people in black pretending they are not tired of playing the same romantic music for the third hour in a row. Guests swept past me in designer gowns and tailored suits, laughing, holding champagne, kissing cheeks like they were running for office. I recognized a few faces from my parents' Christmas cards, charity photos, and all those stiff family newsletters my mother used to send out every December. You know the kind? Perfect smiles, perfect lighting, perfect lies. The wedding was for my older sister, Victoria Wells, soon to be Victoria Thornton. She was marrying Marcus Thornton, a hedge fund manager from an old Connecticut family, with the kind of name that makes country club staff stand up straighter. My parents had practically been waiting for this wedding since Victoria learned how to smile on command. I had not received an invitation. For weeks. I told myself it had to be an oversight. Maybe Victoria assumed Mom sent it. Maybe Mom assumed Victoria sent it. Maybe the calligrapher spelled my name wrong. Which would have been impressive since Myra Wells is not exactly a spelling bee championship word. But deep down, I knew. Still, I came. Not because I wanted to beg for a seat. Not because I wanted to ruin anything. Not because I had some wild plan to flip a table, throw wine, or make a speech that ended with security escorting me out. I am a lot of things. But I am not a daytime television episode. I came because Victoria was my sister, and because in my purse, tucked beneath my lipstick and phone, was a small silver box tied with a white ribbon. It was light enough to carry in one hand, plain enough to be ignored, and powerful enough to bring down the entire beautiful lie my family had been polishing for years. But at that moment, no one in that lobby knew that. I walked to the reception table where two young women in black dresses sat behind a guest list thick enough to count as a family Bible. One of them smiled at me with professional warmth. "Good afternoon," she said. "Are you here for the Wells? Thornton wedding?" "Yes," I said. "Myra Wells. I'm the bride's sister." The word sister felt strange coming out of my mouth. Like I was trying on a coat that used to fit but had been hanging in a closet too long. The woman's smile stayed in place while her finger moved down the page. Then it moved again. Then she flipped to another page. Then another. Now, I have photographed enough weddings to know the exact moment a staff member realizes something is wrong. The smile freezes. The shoulders tighten. The eyes flick up and down like they are hoping the answer will magically appear if they look embarrassed enough. "I'm sorry," she said carefully. "Could you repeat the name?" "Myra Wells." I said, "Myra Wells." She checked again. The other receptionist leaned over to help. Together, they searched through the names while I stood there feeling every second stretch out in front of all those strangers. "There's a Harold Wells," the second woman said softly. "Patricia Wells. Victoria Wells. Marcus Thornton. The Thornton family. But I don't see a Myra Wells." I could hear the ballroom beyond the open doors. Laughter. Glasses clinking. A burst of applause from somewhere inside. 400 guests celebrating my sister. And not one printed line for me. The first receptionist looked up at me with pity. I have always hated pity. Pity is what people give you when they do not want to help, but still want to feel polite about it. I'm very sorry. Mom, she said, your name is not on the guest list. For a moment, I did not move. I looked past her toward the ballroom. White tablecloths, gold chairs, tall centerpieces, waiters carrying trays. A wedding so polished, it could have been photographed for a magazine. My family was in there. My mother probably crying tasteful little tears into a linen napkin. My father shaking hands with men who used verbs like acquire and leverage, even when ordering lunch. Victoria glowing in her expensive gown. Surrounded by people who believed every version of herself, she had sold them. And I was standing outside like a delivery person who had come to the wrong entrance. The receptionist lowered her voice. Is there someone I can call for you? I almost laughed. There was exactly one person I could call. And she was the reason I was standing there. No, I said. I'll handle it. I stepped away from the table, pulled out my phone, and called Victoria. She answered on the fourth ring. What? She snapped. Nah, hello. No warmth. No surprise. Just that sharp little blade in her voice. The one she had been sharpening on me since childhood. Victoria, I said, keeping my voice calm. I'm at the hotel. There was silence on the other end. Not confusion. Not shock. Silence with a smile behind it. Then she said, Why? I came for your wedding. A soft laugh slipped through the phone. Cold. Small. Practiced. You really thought you were invited? There it was. No mistake. No lost envelope. No silly mix-up. Just Victoria being Victoria. Standing somewhere inside that ballroom. Probably holding champagne. Probably surrounded by bridesmaids. Probably enjoying this more than any decent person should. I'm your sister, I said. And? She replied. This wedding is for people who matter. Myra. I looked down at the silver box inside my purse. People who matter. Funny thing about families. They can spend years telling you that you are nothing, then act surprised when you stop asking for permission to exist. I flew from Los Angeles. I said, That sounds like your problem. Behind her, I heard music and voices. Someone laughed. Someone called her name. She covered the phone for a second, then came back even colder. Listen, I don't have time for this. I told Mom you might pull something. And here you are, proving me right. Pull something? I asked. I came quietly. I'm dressed properly. I brought you a gift. A gift? She gave another laugh. What could you possibly give me that I don't already have? I let that one sit. She kept going, because Victoria had never met a silence she did not want to fill with cruelty. Let me guess, she said. A framed picture? Some sad little handmade thing from your photography hobby? My photography hobby. At that point, my so-called hobby had paid for my office in downtown Los Angeles, my staff, my home, and a tax bill that would have made Victoria choke on her bridal champagne. But she did not know that none of them did. And for the first time all day, I was glad. I just wanted to wish you well. I said, No. You wanted attention, she said. You always do this. You show up acting wounded, hoping people feel sorry for you. Well, not today. Today is about me. Of course it was. In Victoria's world, every day was about her. Birthdays, holidays, graduations, funerals. If attention were oxygen, my sister would have installed a private tank and charged the rest of us for breathing. Mom and Dad know I'm not on the list? I asked. They agreed, she said quickly. That should have hurt more than it did. Maybe because some part of me had known before she said it. My mother and father had not forgotten me. They had chosen this, quietly, cleanly. Like removing an extra chair from a table, Victoria lowered her voice. No one wants drama. Myra, no one wants you here. Not Mom. Not Dad. Not me. You have always been awkward at family events, and I am not letting you embarrass us in front of the Thorntons. I stared at my reflection in the polished wall across from me. My hair was neat. My lipstick was still perfect. My hands were steady. That surprised me. For most of my life, a sentence like that would have cracked something open inside me. I would have swallowed the hurt. apologized for taking up space, and gone somewhere private to cry. That was the old routine. My family handed me shame, and I carried it like luggage. But standing there in that hotel lobby, I felt something different. Not rage, not panic. Clarity. I understand, I said. Victoria paused. I think she expected tears. Maybe begging. Maybe a trembling little speech about how family should mean something. Poor thing. She must have been so disappointed. You understand? She repeated. Yes, I said. I'll leave your gift at the reception table and go. Fine, she said. Just don't cause a scene. Then she hung up. I stood there with the phone against my ear for one extra second, listening to the deadline. Don't cause a scene. That was rich. Coming from a woman who had turned cruelty into a family tradition and called it honesty, I slipped my phone into my purse and looked back toward the gift table near the ballroom entrance. It was covered with expensive boxes, glossy bags, envelopes full of checks, crystal, silver, probably half the Tiffany catalog. My little silver box would look almost silly there. Almost. I walked over slowly, feeling the receptionist watching me from behind her table. I found a small open space near the edge and placed the box down with care. Then I tucked the card beneath the ribbon. To Victoria. From your sister. Myra. Simple. Polite. Dangerous. The receptionist approached me quietly. Ma'am? She said. Are you sure you don't want me to speak with the coordinator? Maybe there's something we can do. I looked at her kind face and gave her a small smile. No. Thank you, I said. Some gifts work better when the giver isn't in the room. She blinked, unsure whether to laugh or call security. I did not blame her. I took one last look at the ballroom doors. Inside, my sister was about to have the perfect wedding she had always wanted. The perfect dress, the perfect husband, the perfect guests, the perfect story, except for one small box. I turned and walked out of the Grand Belmont Hotel without raising my voice, without shedding a tear, and without looking back. Outside, the Boston air felt sharp against my face. I ordered a taxi to Logan Airport, climbed into the back seat, and watched the hotel shrink behind me. My phone stayed silent. For the moment, Victoria had no idea what was waiting for her on that gift table, but she was about to find out. The taxi turned onto the highway, and I watched Boston slide past the window like a place that knew me but never bothered to call. That city had my fingerprints all over it. I had scraped my knees on its sidewalks, to learn to ride a bike on its narrow streets, sat through church services in stiff dresses, and smiled through family photos where everybody looked polished enough to be printed on a holiday card. From the outside, the Wells family looked like one of those old Boston families people whispered about with admiration. We lived in a 3-story colonial house in Beacon Hill, the kind with black shutters, brick steps, and a front door my mother had repainted every few years, because apparently dark green and slightly darker green were two completely different moods. The house had crown molding, antique rugs, silver-framed photos, and rooms nobody was allowed to sit in unless company came over. I used to think every family had a living room that existed only for strangers. My father, Harold Wells, worked in finance. He wore tailored suits, read the Wall Street Journal with his coffee, and had a talent for making even breakfast feel like a board meeting. My mother, Patricia, served on charity committees, planned benefit luncheons, and spoke in that smooth, controlled voice women use when they have already decided what everyone in the room should do. Then there was Victoria. Victoria was 3 years older than me, and in our house, that somehow made her a national treasure. She was not just my sister. She was the event, the headline, the weather system. If Victoria was happy, the whole house relaxed. If Victoria was upset, everybody moved carefully, like we were walking across a floor covered in broken glass. And if I was upset, well, someone usually told me not to be dramatic. That was the family arrangement. Victoria got the largest bedroom, the one with the bay window overlooking the street. My mother said it was because she was older and needed more space. I got the smaller room at the back of the house, facing the alley. where the garbage trucks came early enough to make sure no child ever developed a peaceful personality. Victoria's room had custom curtains, a white canopy bed, a vanity with little gold handles, and a closet full of clothes that were bought new, on purpose, just for her. My room had her old furniture. Here old lamp, here old disc, and clothes passed down with little comments like, "This barely looks worn," which was never true. Victoria treated clothes the way some people treat rental cars. By the time they reached me, they had seen things. I remember one winter coat in particular. Navy wool, missing a button. Scratchy collar. My mother handed it to me, like she was presenting me with a gift from a queen. "Victoria only wore this one season," she said. That was because Victoria hated it and had screamed until they bought her a camel coat from Burberry. I wore the navy coat for 2 winters. At school, people knew exactly who I was. Not because I had done anything interesting, but because I was Victoria Wells's little sister. Teachers smiled when they heard my last name, then looked surprised when I was quiet, ordinary, and not glowing with whatever expensive confidence Victoria carried around, like perfume. Victoria did ballet. Victoria took piano. Victoria had French tutoring, tennis lessons, summer camp in Maine, and a birthday party every year that looked like my mother had confused childhood with a social campaign. My birthday was different. My 10th birthday was the first day I truly understood my position in the family. Before that, I had felt it. Of course. Children always know. They may not have the words, but they know who gets the first slice of cake and who gets told to be grateful for the crumbs. That morning, I woke up excited because turning 10 felt important. Double digits. A whole new chapter. Or so I thought. I had imagined balloons in the kitchen. Maybe pancakes. Maybe my father would ruffle my hair and say, "Happy birthday, kiddo." Maybe my mother would have ordered a cake with my name on it instead of pretending vanilla cupcakes from the grocery store were festive enough. I ran downstairs in my pajamas. Hair still messy. Heart wide open. The kitchen was bright and quiet. My mother stood near the counter, phone tucked between her shoulder and ear, flipping through a binder for Victoria's upcoming cotillion. Yes, a cotillon. Because apparently my sister needed formal lessons in how to stand, smile, and make everyone else feel underdressed. My father was already gone. Victoria sat at the table eating strawberries from a little glass bowl. Scrolling through a magazine she had no business reading at 13. I waited. No one said anything. Finally, I cleared my throat. "Mom," I said, "it's my birthday." My mother covered the phone with one hand and gave me a quick smile. Not a warm smile. A busy smile. "I know, sweetheart. We'll do something later." Then she went right back to discussing floral arrangements for Victoria. Later never came. There was no cake. No dinner out. No little family celebration. That evening, Victoria complained about needing new shoes for her cotillion practice. And suddenly we were all in the car driving to Newbury Street because her feet were apparently a 5-alarm emergency. I sat in the back seat, watching store lights pass by the window, holding my own hands in my lap so I would not cry. At the shoe store, my mother held up pair after pair for Victoria, while my father checked emails near the door. Victoria pouted, rejected everything, and finally chose a pair that cost more than my entire birthday would have, if anyone had remembered to have one. On the ride home, my mother said, "Myra, don't look so gloomy. It's unbecoming." Unbecoming. I was 10. I was not trying to become anything. I was trying not to disappear. That was how it worked in our house. Victoria's needs were urgent. Mine were optional. Victoria's feelings were delicate. Mine were inconvenient. Victoria's future was something to invest in. Mine was something to worry about later. Preferably never. There were little moments, too. The kind that do not sound dramatic when you say them out loud, but build up inside a person over time. At dinner, my father asked Victoria about her classes, her friends, her plans, her opinions on things she barely understood, but delivered with great confidence. When I tried to speak, someone interrupted. "If I brought home an A," my mother said. "Good. If Victoria brought home an A-, we had a family discussion about stress, pressure, and whether the teacher was biased. When Victoria had a dance recital, my parents arrived early with flowers and a camera. When I had a school art show, my mother sent the housekeeper because she had a committee meeting, and my father said parking would be impossible. The housekeeper, Mrs. Alvarez, at least looked at every drawing. She even told me my watercolor of the Charles River was beautiful. I believed her because she had no reason to lie. One Thanksgiving, when I was 12, my aunt asked what I wanted to be when I grew up. Before I could answer, Victoria cut in and said, "She'll probably do something with crafts." Everyone laughed. I laughed too. Because that is what you do when you are the joke and still want a seat at the table. My father said, "Well, not everyone is built for serious work." He did not say it cruelly. That almost made it worse. Cruelty at least has heat. This was casual. Automatics. Like he was commenting on the weather. My mother added, "Myra has a sweet little creative side." Sweet little creative side. That was their way of shrinking anything I loved until it sounded harmless. Victoria, meanwhile, was already being discussed as future leadership material. My father loved that phrase. Leadership material. He said it when she argued with teachers. He said it when she bossed around other children. He said it when she corrected adults at dinner. If I had done any of that, I would have been sent upstairs to think about my tone. By the time I was a teenager, I had learned the safest way to survive in that house was to need as little as possible. I stopped asking my parents to come to school events. I stopped showing them my drawings. I stopped telling them when something hurt. I became very good at being easy. That is one of the saddest skills a child can learn. Being easy. Easy to ignore. Easy to reschedule. Easy to leave out. Easy to explain away. And the strangest part was, from the outside, nobody would have believed me. We were not poor. I had food, clothes, a good school, vacations, a safe neighborhood. People think neglect always looks like locked doors and empty refrigerators. Sometimes it looks like a beautiful home, where your name is never the one being called with pride. Sometimes it looks like your mother remembering the exact shade of ribbon your sister wants for a party, but forgetting the day you turned 10. Sometimes it looks like your father praising your sister for ambition while telling you to be realistic. Sometimes it looks like smiling in every family photo while knowing you could step out of the frame and nobody would notice until Christmas cards came back from the printer. The only person who noticed was Grandma Eleanor. But that part of the story did not begin with a grand speech or some dramatic rescue. It began quietly, later that same forgotten birthday, with a soft knock on my bedroom door and a small wrapped box in her hands. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my pajamas before I opened the door. Because even at 10 years old I already knew, crying made people uncomfortable in our house. Grandma Eleanor stood in the hallway holding a small wrapped box against her chest. She was my father's mother, Eleanor Hartwell Wells. Though most people in Boston just called her Mrs. Hartwell, like she had stepped out of a history book and forgotten to leave. She was not loud. She never needed to be. She had that old-school kind of presence where people straightened up when she entered a room. Not because they were scared of her, but because they knew she was paying attention, and Grandma Eleanor always paid attention. Her silver hair was pinned neatly at the back of her head. She wore a dark green coat, pearl earrings, and leather gloves. Even though she was standing inside our house, she looked elegant in the way women used to look. Elegant before everyone started showing up to the grocery store in pajama pants and calling it self-care. "Happy birthday, my darling girl," she said. That was all it took. Not a party. Not balloons. Not a big cake with pink frosting. Just one person remembering without being reminded. I stepped aside, and she came into my room like it was the most important place in the house. Not the formal dining room. Not Victoria's bedroom with its custom curtains. My small room at the back, with its second-hand furniture and alley view. She sat on the edge of my bed and patted the spot beside her. I climbed up slowly, trying to act normal, even though my throat felt tight. "I'm sorry I wasn't here this morning," she said. "I had a meeting at the museum." "It's okay," I said automatically. She looked at me for a long second. No, it isn't. I did not know what to say to that. In our family, it's okay, was the required answer. You said it when someone forgot you, dismissed you, interrupted you, or made you feel small. You said it because telling the truth would only make the room colder. Grandma Eleanor reached over and brushed my hair away from my face. You don't have to pretend with me, she said. That scared me more than the forgetting. Because pretending was my main talent by then. She placed the wrapped box in my lap. It was heavier than I expected. Covered in cream paper, with a thin blue ribbon. No cartoon animals. No cheap bow. No last-minute drugstore bag. She had chosen it with care. Go on, she said. I untied the ribbon and peeled back the paper. Inside was a leather case. Worn at the edges but polished. I opened it and found a camera. A real camera. Not a plastic toy. Not one of those disposable things people bought for vacations. It had a silver body. Black leather trim. And a strap that smelled faintly of dust and old books. I held it carefully with both hands. Afraid I might break it just by breathing too hard. This was yours? I asked. It was, she said. I bought it when I was a young woman. Took it to Paris. Rome. Chicago. New Orleans. And one very unpleasant charity luncheon in Palm Beach, where the chicken was dry enough to be classified as a building material. I laughed before I could stop myself. Grandma smiled. There she is, she said. I knew that girl was still in there. I looked down at the camera again. Why are you giving it to me? Because you see things. I frowned. Everybody sees things. No, she said gently. Most people look. Very few people see. At 10. I did not fully understand that. I knew I liked watching people when they thought nobody noticed. I knew I liked the way light came through the kitchen window in the late afternoon. Even if I would never have said something like that out loud, because Victoria would have made gagging noises until my mother told me to stop being sensitive. I knew I liked drawing faces, houses, trees, cups, chairs, anything that stayed still long enough. But I did not know that was worth anything. Grandma Eleanor seemed to think it was. She lifted the camera from my hands and showed me how to hold it properly. One hand under the body. One hand near the lens, elbows close. Steady. But not stiff. Respect the object, she said. But don't fear it. That was good advice for a camera. Later, I would realize it was also good advice for family. Money. Grief. And people who used expensive manners to hide cheap character. She stood and walked to my window. Down below, the alley looked ordinary. Brick wall. Trash cans. A delivery truck squeezed halfway into the narrow space. Its driver arguing with someone I could not see. Grandma raised the camera. Tell me what you see, she said. I shrugged. Garbage cans. What else? A truck. What else? I looked harder. The driver had one hand on his hip. The other person, a woman in a bakery apron, was pointing toward the street. A little brown dog sat beside her, watching both of them like a judge. There's a dog, I said. Grandma nodded. And? He looks annoyed. Grandma laughed softly. Exactly. That is the picture. I took the camera and looked through the viewfinder. The world narrowed. Everything extra disappeared. The dog. The woman. The driver. The argument. The tiny comedy of a Boston alley on a forgotten birthday. For the first time all day, I did not feel invisible. I felt focused. Grandma showed me how to press the shutter. The click was small, but it felt important. There, she said. You just saved a moment. I looked at her. Saved it? Yes. Most moments vanish. A photograph argues with time a little. Now, I know I said I do not like fancy metaphors. And I still don't. But Grandma was a loud one now and then. She had earned it. Besides, when an old Boston woman gives you a camera and wisdom on your 10th birthday, you do not interrupt her and ask for a simpler sentence. She spent the next hour with me, teaching me how to wind the film, adjust the focus, and look for the story inside a scene. Not the prettiest part. The truest part. Victoria knocked once. opened the door without waiting, and looked inside. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Teaching your sister photography." Grandma said. "Victoria ma de aface?" "Why?" Grandma turned to her with that calm smile that could freeze soup. "Because she has talent." Victoria blinked. Like the word had been spoken in the wrong room. "Mom says dinner is ready?" she said. Then she looked at the camera in my hands. "Is that old?" "Yes," I said. She smirked. "Figures." She left before I could answer. Grandma did not chase after her. She did not scold. She simply looked at me and said, "Never let someone who only values new things tell you what is valuable." I held that sentence for years. At dinner, nobody mentioned my birthday. "Not really," my mother said. "Oh, Eleanor, you didn't have to bring Myra something." In that voice adults use when they mean, "Why are you making us look bad?" Grandma cut her roast chicken with perfect calm. "I wanted to," she said. My father asked Victoria about her cotillion shoes. Victoria described them in great detail. Too much detail. Frankly, they were shoes, not a peace treaty. My mother listened like the future of the family depended on satin straps. I sat quietly with the camera case beside my chair, every few minutes. Grandma's eyes met mine across the table, and she gave me the smallest smile. Not pity, not apology. Recognition. That was what she gave me more than anything. She recognized me. Over the next few years, she became my safe place. She took me to museums on Saturday mornings. She let me wander through galleries without rushing me. She bought me books about photographers and artists. She taught me the difference between something expensive and something meaningful, which was a lesson my family badly needed, but never signed up for. When my parents forgot my school art show, Grandma came. When Victoria rolled her eyes at my drawings, Grandma had them framed. When my father said creative work was a nice hobby, but not a career, Grandma asked him how many bankers had changed his life lately. He did not enjoy that question. I enjoyed it enough for both of us. She never told me I was better than Victoria. That was not her way. She did not build me up by tearing my sister down. She simply made room for me in a family that acted like space was limited, and Victoria had already reserved all of it. One afternoon, when I was 16, Grandma took me to a small jewelry shop near Newbury Street. Not one of those flashy places with guards at the door and salespeople who look at your shoes before your face. This shop was quiet, old, and full of history. She showed me pearl necklaces, diamond pins, sapphire earrings, and brooches with tiny details you could miss if you were in a hurry. "These pieces have stories," she told me. "Never confuse shine with worth." I watched her hands as she held a pearl bracelet that had belonged to her mother. She was not admiring the price. She was remembering the person. That was Grandma Eleanor. She saw people that way too. Not for their shine, for their worth, and for reasons I still thank God for. She saw mine long before I did. I carried that camera everywhere after that. Even when my family acted like I was carrying around a toaster and calling it a future. By high school, photography was no longer just something I did when I was bored. It was the one part of my life that made sense. I took pictures before school, after school, on weekends. During family events where nobody noticed, I had slipped out of the room. While Victoria was collecting compliments like they were loyalty points, I was learning how to frame a face, catch a quiet gesture, and tell the truth without interrupting anyone. That last part came naturally to me. I spent a lot of time not interrupting anyone. My school had a small darkroom in the basement, right next to the theater storage closet. It smelled like chemicals, dust, and old paint. Not exactly glamorous, but I loved it. I loved the red light, the trays, the slow patience of watching an image appear on paper. It felt honest. You did the work, and the picture showed you what was there. No pretending, no family politics, no one saying, "Let's not upset Victoria." My photography teacher, Mr. Keene, was the first person outside Grandma Eleanor who treated my work like it mattered. He was a tall man with gray hair, wire glasses, and the permanent expression of someone who had seen too many teenagers misuse expensive equipment. But when he looked at my prints, he got quiet in a good way. "You have timing?" he told me once, studying a photo I had taken of two women laughing outside a church in the rain. That can't really be taught. I carried that sentence around for weeks. Not because I needed praise every 5 minutes. I was not Victoria. I did not require applause to enter a room. But when you grow up hearing your interests called cute, little, sweet, or impractical, one serious adult saying, "This is real," can feel like someone opening a window. During my senior year, Mr. Keene helped me prepare a portfolio for college applications. He pushed me hard. He made me reshoot things. He made me explain why each image mattered. He told me not to hide behind pretty pictures. Pretty is easy, he said. Truth is harder. I applied to several art schools without telling my parents at first. Not because I was trying to be sneaky, but because I already knew the conversation would end with my father using the phrase backup plan until everyone at the table lost the will to live. When the acceptance letter came from Rhode Island School of Design, I stared at it for so long that the words blurred. Then I read the scholarship offer. Full scholarship. Not partial. Not good luck finding the rest. Full. I was 17 years old, standing in our kitchen with an envelope in my hand. And for one wild second I thought, this will do it. This will finally make them proud. I should have known better. But hope is stubborn. It keeps crawling back even after people step on it. My mother was at the island, sorting through place cards for a charity luncheon. My father was reading something on his laptop. Victoria was home from college for the weekend, sitting at the table in yoga pants that cost more than my winter coat had. I got in, I said. My mother looked up. Got into what? Rhode Island School of Design. My father's eyes moved from his laptop to the envelope. For photography? Yes, I said. And they gave me a full scholarship? That was the part I thought would change his face. It did not. He leaned back in his chair. Well, that is generous. Generous. Not congratulations. Not we are proud of you. Not you earned this. Generous. As if the school had taken pity on me and mailed over a basket of muffins. My mother smiled lightly. That's wonderful. Sweetheart. Very nice. Very nice, was what she said, when a neighbor planted new tulips. Victoria picked up the letter and skimmed it. Art school, she said. Like the words tasted funny. That's brave. In Victoria's language, brave meant stupid, but harder to criticize in public. It's one of the best art schools in the country, I said. My father folded his hands. Myra, talent is fine, but you need to think long term. Photography is not exactly a stable career. It can be. It can be a hobby, he said. Maybe a side business. Weddings. Portrait. That sort of thing. Funny how he said weddings like it was a small thing. Years later, weddings would pay my employees, my rent, my taxes, and the kind of invoices my father would have respected if they came from a law firm. But back then, I was just his quiet daughter with a camera. I have a full scholarship, I said again, because I wanted him to hear the part where I'd done something difficult. He nodded. That helps? That helps. Victoria looked at me with a little smile. At least Mom and Dad won't have to waste money on it. Nobody corrected her. I stood there holding the letter that should have been a celebration and felt something inside me pull back. Not break exactly. More like a hand letting go of a rope. Grandma Eleanor was the person I called. She answered on the second ring. I got in, I said, and my voice cracked before I could stop it. Wrist. Full scholarship. There was a beat of silence. Then she said, I knew it. Not I hoped. Not how surprising. Not, are you sure? I knew it. The next week, she took me to lunch at a small restaurant near the public garden. She ordered tea. I ordered chicken salad. And she made the waiter bring dessert, even though it was noon because, as she put it, a scholarship of this size deserves cake. And society will survive. She gave me a leather portfolio case as a graduation gift. Inside, she had tucked a note. For the work the world has not seen yet. I still have that note. Graduation came that June. On a Saturday afternoon, I had been selected to give a short speech about pursuing your passion. It was only a few minutes long, but I had practiced it so many times in my room that even the alley cats behind the house probably knew the ending. I told my parents about the ceremony weeks in advance. I told them the date. I told them the time. I told them the parking situation. I printed directions because my father loved to act like driving anywhere outside his routine required a military briefing. The morning of graduation, I came downstairs in my cap and gown, speech notes folded in my hand. I had barely slept. I was nervous, excited, and still foolish enough to imagine my mother taking pictures, my father shaking my hand. Victoria may be saying something sharp but harmless. The kitchen was busy, but not for me. Victoria stood near the counter in a navy dress, checking her reflection in the microwave door. My mother was fastening earrings. My father was on his phone. The ceremony starts at 2. I said, we should leave by 1 to get seats. My mother froze for half a second. That was all I needed to see. Oh, sweetheart, she said. 2 words. That was usually when bad news put on nice shoes and walked into the room. What? I asked. My father put his phone down. Something came up. I looked at Victoria. She did not even pretend to be sorry. I have a networking event, she said. Goldman Sachs. It's a huge opportunity. My father nodded, like she had just announced she was meeting the president, instead of attending a room full of people in name tags, pretending to enjoy warm shrimp. It's important for her career, he said. I stared at him. It's my graduation. My mother stepped closer. We know, honey. But this event could really open doors for Victoria. And my graduation doesn't matter? That's not what we said, my father replied. No, I said. It's just what you meant. The room went still. That was the kind of sentence I almost never said out loud. My father's jaw tightened. Don't be dramatic. There it was. The family emergency brake. Don't be dramatic. A useful phrase when you want someone to stop reacting to the thing you did. Victoria picked up her purse. It's not like it's college graduation. It's high school. I'm giving a speech, I said. My mother looked genuinely surprised. Today, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes the body chooses the wrong sound just to keep from falling apart. Yes, Mom. Today, she touched my arm. We'll celebrate later. Later. The old family promise. As reliable as a screen door in a hurricane. My father glanced at his watch. We need to go. And they did. They left me standing in the kitchen in my cap and gown, while the front door closed behind them. For a minute, I did not move. Then I walked upstairs, sat on the edge of my bed, and looked at the speech in my hands. I had written a line about family support. I crossed it out with a pen so hard the paper tore. I went to graduation alone. I took a cab because I did not trust myself to drive. The driver wished me good luck when I got out. A stranger in a yellow cab showed me more warmth that day than the people whose names were printed on my birth certificate. Life has a sense of humor. Not always a kind one. The auditorium was packed. Families filled the seats. Waving. Taking pictures. Holding flowers. Calling out names. I stood with my classmates in the hallway, adjusting my cap, pretending not to notice all the parents around me. When it was my turn to speak, I walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd. Rows of faces. Hundreds of people. And then I saw her. Grandma Eleanor sat in the front row, wearing a pale blue suit and pearl earrings. She had a program folded in her lap and both hands raised, already clapping before I had even said a word. I almost lost it right there. But I did not. I gave the speech. I spoke about finding the thing that makes you pay attention. I spoke about work, fear, and taking yourself seriously, even when other people do not. I did not say my parents had skipped the ceremony. I did not say my sister's networking event mattered more. I did not need to. Grandma knew. When they called my name and I crossed the stage to receive my diploma, she stood. Fully stood. Clapped loud enough for 3 people. Maybe 4. The woman had excellent posture and strong opinions. After the ceremony, she found me outside near the steps. I was holding my diploma in one hand and my torn speech in the other. You were magnificent, she said. I shook my head. They didn't come. I know. They chose Victoria. Her face softened. They often do. That honesty hurt. But it also helped. She did not dress it up. She did not tell me they meant well. She did not ask me to understand them. She simply stood beside me in the truth. Then she took my hands. Listen to me, Myra, she said. The greatest treasures are not always the ones people fight over. Sometimes they are the ones quietly passed on. I did not understand what she meant. Not then. I thought she was talking about the camera. Or the portfolio case. Or maybe the kind of love she had given me, without making a production out of it. Years later, standing outside my sister's wedding with a silver box in my purse, I would understand exactly what Grandma Eleanor had been trying to tell me. That day, though, I only knew one thing. I was done waiting for my family to clap. I stopped waiting for applause, and that made packing easier than I expected. 2 weeks after graduation, I stood in my small bedroom at the back of the Beacon Hill house and filled 2 suitcases with everything I believed still belonged to me. Clothes, camera equipment, a few books, the leather portfolio case Grandma Eleanor had given me, and the old silver camera that had started the whole thing. I left behind most of the hand-me-downs. They had never really felt like mine anyway. My mother knocked once and opened the door before I answered. Because privacy in our house was treated like a charming idea, other families might try. You're really doing this? She asked. I folded a sweater and placed it in the suitcase. Yes. Los Angeles is very far. That's the point. She frowned. Not because she was hurt exactly, but because she disliked answers that came with edges. You could stay closer, she said. Providence isn't that far. You could come home on weekends. I almost smiled. Come home on weekends. To do what? Sit quietly at dinner while Victoria discussed internships and my father nodded like she was briefing Congress. I need space, I said. My mother looked around my room, as if searching for something sentimental enough to make me change my mind. You've always been so independent, she said. That one landed harder than I expected. Independent. That was what people called you when they did not want to admit they had left you alone. I was not born independent. I became independent because depending on my parents was like leaning on a door that never latched. I had practice, I said. She heard it. I saw that she heard it. But hearing and changing are 2 different sports. And my mother had never trained for the second one. Downstairs. My father was in his study. I found him behind his desk, reading financial reports with the same expression he used for family problems. Which is to say, he looked mildly annoyed that feelings had interrupted his schedule. My flight leaves tomorrow morning, I said. He removed his glasses. You have enough money? Yes. Los Angeles is expensive. I know. Photography is competitive. I know that too. He leaned back. I'm not saying you can't try. I just want you to be realistic. There it was again. Realistic. The word people use when they want to lower your ceiling and call it wisdom. I am being realistic, I said. That's why I'm leaving. He did not like that. For a second, I thought he might say something fatherly. Something like, I'm proud of you. Or, call if you need anything. Or even, good luck. Kid. I would have taken any of those. I was not picky. At that point, emotional scraps still looked like dinner to me. Instead, he said, don't expect this family to fund a fantasy. I nodded. Understood. And that was our goodbye. Victoria did not say goodbye at all. She was spending the summer in New York, working some finance-adjacent internship my father had arranged through a friend who owed him a favor. She did send a text. Though, good luck in Hollywood. Try not to become one of those people who wears scarves indoors. That was Victoria's way of being affectionate. Or cruel. With her, it was often the same outfit with different shoes. The next morning, Grandma Eleanor drove me to Logan Airport. Not a driver, not a car service. Grandma herself, in her old cream-colored sedan that smelled faintly of leather, peppermint, and the kind of perfume they probably stopped making before I was born. We barely spoke for the first few miles. Boston passed by outside the windows. Albrecht. Gray sky. Old trees, and narrow streets that had shaped me more than I wanted to admit. At the curb outside the terminal, Grandma turned off the engine and sat quietly. "You have everything?" she asked. "I think so." "No," she said, looking straight at me. "Do you have yourself?" That was such a Grandma Eleanor question. Simple enough to fit on a greeting card. Serious enough to ruin your breathing. "I'm trying," I said. She reached into her purse and handed me a small envelope. "Open it when you land." "Grandma!" "No arguments." I'm old. And I outrank you." I laughed. Because she knew exactly when I needed to. Then she held my face in both hands. "Build your life." "Myra." "Not the life they understand. Not the one they approve of. Yours." I hugged her so tightly she made a small sound and told me she still required her ribs. When I walked through security, I turned back once. She was still standing there, one gloved hand raised, watching until I disappeared. I opened the envelope after landing at LAX. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note for rent, film, food, and courage. Use all four wisely. I cried in the airport bathroom because I was 18. Alone. Overwhelmed. And apparently too proud to cry somewhere with better lighting. Los Angeles was nothing like Boston. Boston felt old, careful, and judgmental in a wool coat. Los Angeles felt bright, loud, sunburned, and completely uninterested in who your grandfather knew. It was terrifying. I loved it immediately. My first apartment was a studio in Koreatown with thin walls, a stubborn air conditioner, and a kitchen so small I could touch the refrigerator and the sink at the same time. The building had a laundry room that ate quarters like it had gambling debts, and my upstairs neighbor practiced electric guitar at midnight with enthusiasm far greater than skill. But it was mine. I worked everywhere I could. I assisted wedding photographers. I carried light stands. I taped cords. I fetched coffee. I held reflectors until my arms shook. I learned how to calm nervous brides, how to deal with drunk uncles, how to shoot in bad hotel lighting, how to make a tired mother look graceful, and how to keep smiling when a groom's cousin asked if I could just Photoshop him taller. You learn a lot about people at weddings. You learn who has money and who has manners. They are not always the same people. You learn which families are warm, which are performing, and which ones should probably have settled a few things before booking a ballroom. You learn that every wedding has one aunt who believes she is the assistant director. You learn to avoid her unless you enjoy being told where to stand by a woman holding a champagne flute before noon. I was good at the job because I understood what happened at the edges of a room. The bride gripping her father's hand before walking down the aisle, the groom's grandmother wiping her eyes when nobody was looking, the sister who smiled too hard, the mother who adjusted the veil because touching the fabric was easier than saying she was proud. I saw those moments because I had spent my whole life watching from outside the center. After college, I kept working. I took small jobs, then better jobs, then jobs where people started asking for me by name. I saved every dollar I could. I rented equipment before I could buy it. I ate more peanut butter sandwiches than any adult woman should admit in public. I slept badly, worked constantly, and built a portfolio one weekend at a time. When I was 24, I registered Everlight Studios. The name came from something Grandma Eleanor used to say when we walked through museums. Good light tells the truth. I wanted a company built on that idea. Not flashy, not fake, just honest, beautiful work. At first, Everlight was just me. 1-second shooter. And a website I built myself, with more confidence than technical skill. If you clicked too fast, half the gallery froze. Very professional. Nothing says luxury wedding photography like praying your homepage survives a bride's mother using an iPad. But clients came, then referrals, then better venues, then planners, then magazines. By 27, Everlight Studios had a real office in downtown Los Angeles with floor-to-ceiling windows, 12 employees, a client list full of actors, executives, athletes, and families wealthy enough to say things like, the smaller vineyard without irony. The year before Victoria's wedding, we did over $3 million in revenue, I should probably say that calmly. But let me be honest. The first time my accountant showed me the numbers, I stared at the report and asked if she had accidentally included someone else's company. She did not laugh. Accountants rarely do. They save their joy for depreciation schedules. My family knew none of it. Not because I hid it with some grand secret plan. They simply never asked. My mother called maybe twice a year. The conversations were polite and thin. How's California? Sunny. Are you still doing photography? Yes. That's nice. That's nice. The official family stamp for anything I cared about. My father called even less. When he did, he asked practical questions. The kind that sounded responsible but carried judgment underneath. Do you have health insurance? Yes. Are you saving for retirement? Yes. Still working weddings? Yes. He always paused after that, as if waiting for me to admit defeat and apply to business school at last. Victoria called when she wanted an audience. By then, she was a senior marketing director in New York. Engaged in the kind of corporate climb, my parents understood. She liked to update me on promotions, bonuses, campaigns, dinner reservations, charity events, and people with last names that sounded like buildings. I just closed a 7-figure campaign, she told me one night. That's great. I said, congratulations. What about you? She asked. Still doing those little photo shoots? I looked around my office. Awards on the wall, contracts on my desk, a calendar booked 18 months out. Yes, I said. Still doing those? She gave a little laugh. Well, as long as you're happy. There it was. The sentence people use when they think you have failed politely. A few months later, she called to tell me our parents were hosting a celebration dinner for her promotion. Obviously. You're not invited, she said. It's just immediate family. Immediate family. I was sitting at my desk when she said it, watching the sun drop behind the Los Angeles skyline, turning the glass towers gold. For years, words like that had made me feel small. That night, they made me tired. Of course, I said. Have a wonderful time. I hung up and looked at the framed photo on my shelf. Grandma Eleanor and me, outside a gallery, her hand on my shoulder. Both of us smiling like we knew something the rest of the family had missed. Maybe we did. Because the truth was, I had built a life without them. Not a perfect life. Not an easy one. But mine. And still, some quiet part of me wished they would turn around one day and see it. That was the part I hated admitting. I did not need their approval anymore. But I still wanted them to know I had survived without it. I wanted them to know I had survived without their approval. But Grandma Eleanor was the only one who never needed proof. She already knew. That was why the call shattered me. It came on a Tuesday morning in Los Angeles. I was in my office, reviewing a contract for a vineyard wedding in Napa, half listening to my assistant discuss floral installation timing with a planner who believed simple and understated meant 300 white roses and a harpist. My phone buzzed beside my laptop with a Boston number I did not recognize. Normally, I let unknown numbers go to voicemail. In my line of work, half of them are vendors, and the other half are people asking if I can photograph a wedding next Saturday for exposure. Which is a beautiful word people use when they do not want to pay you. But something made me answer. Hello, this is Myra Wells. A man's voice came through, low and careful. Miss Wells. My name is Harrison Lawson. I was your grandmother's attorney. Was. Not am. That one word did more damage than the whole sentence. I stood up without meaning to. Is she all right? There was a pause. I'm very sorry, he said. Eleanor Hartwell passed away last night. The office went quiet around me, even though I know it did not. Phones still rang. Jenna still typed. Somewhere. A printer still made that awful grinding sound, like it was personally offended by paper. But for me, everything stopped. Grandma Eleanor was 82. She had been slowing down. Yes. Her voice had grown softer on the phone. She got tired more easily. She complained about her knees with the dignity of a woman who considered aging rude but unavoidable. Still, I thought there would be more time. That is the lie grief catches you telling yourself. More time for one more visit. More time for one more lunch. More time to sit with her in a museum and listen while she pointed out details everyone else walked past. More time to tell her that the camera she gave me had become a life, not just a gift. I gripped the edge of my desk. When is the funeral? I asked. Friday morning. Mr. Lawson said. At Trinity Church. Of course it would be Trinity. Grandma Eleanor loved that church. She said the building had better manners than most people. I'll be there, I said. I booked the next flight to Boston. On the plane. I did not sleep. I sat by the window with my coat folded over my lap and stared at clouds that looked too peaceful for what was happening inside me. I kept thinking about the last time I had spoken to her. She had asked about a wedding I photographed in Santa Barbara. I had complained about a mother of the bride who wanted me to make her look 20 years younger but still natural. Grandma had said, "Tell her time is not a defect." I had laughed. That was our last normal conversation. I hated that I had not known it. The funeral was held on a cold Boston morning. Trinity Church was full, which did not surprise me. Grandma Eleanor had spent her life showing up for people, and people remembered that. There were artists she had supported, museum directors, old friends, young scholarship students, neighbors, former employees, and half of Boston's polite society dressed in black and whispering as if grief required good posture. My parents sat in the front row. My father, Harold. I looked older than I remembered, still stiff, still controlled, still wearing grief, like a suit that had been tailored too tightly. My mother, Patricia, dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. The kind of delicate crying she did well in public. Victoria stood beside them in a black designer dress, pearls at her throat, lips pressed together in an expression that looked almost sad if you did not know her well enough to see the calculation underneath. I sat in the third row, not with my family. No one asked me to join them. No one saved me a seat. I should have expected that. I did expect it. But expectation does not always protect you. Sometimes it just lets you know the punch is coming before it lands. The service was beautiful. The priest spoke about Eleanor's generosity, her love of art, her eye for beauty, her stubborn loyalty to people she believed in. A young painter stood up and said Grandma had paid his studio rent when he was ready to quit. A museum curator talked about her donations. A former scholarship student cried through half her speech and still said more true things than my family had managed in years. I sat very still, hands folded in my lap, and tried not to fall apart. Then I heard Victoria whisper, "The jewelry collection," she said. My head turned slightly. She was leaning toward my mother. "Have you spoken to the lawyer?" Victoria asked. "I need to know when we can access it." My mother's eyes darted around. "Not here." Victoria frowned. "The wedding planning will move fast once Marcus proposes officially. If I'm wearing Grandma's pearls, I need them cleaned and appraised." Grandma Eleanor was still in a casket at the front of the church, and my sister was already styling herself in the inheritance. I looked forward again and stared at the flowers beside the altar. Something hard settled in my chest. Not anger exactly. Not yet. More like a door closing. After the service, people moved slowly into the church aisle, speaking in soft voices, hugging, promising lunches they would never schedule. My parents were surrounded by guests offering condolences. Victoria stood nearby, accepting sympathy like she had been personally hired to represent sorrow at an upscale event. I stayed near the back, ready to leave. That was when a hand touched my shoulder. "Miss Wells?" I turned and saw Harrison Lawson. He was in his late 60s, gray-haired, neatly dressed, with tired eyes and a kind face. He looked like the kind of attorney who still believed words mattered. Grandma would have liked that. Maybe that was why she had chosen him. "Yes," I said. "I'm very sorry for your loss." "Thank you." He glanced toward my family, then back at me. "Your grandmother asked that I speak with you privately after the service." My stomach tightened. "With me?" "Yes. There is something she wanted you to have." I followed him to a small office at the back of the church. It had a wooden desk, 2 chairs, a brass lamp, and shelves filled with hymnals. The noise from outside faded when he closed the door. "Mr. Lawson gestured for me to sit. He placed a manila envelope on the desk between us. Your grandmother came to my office 2 years ago, he said. She was very clear about her wishes. What I'm about to show you is separate from the public reading of her will. I stared at the envelope. Separate? Yes? She wanted certain matters handled quietly, and she gave me strict instructions that this be shared with you first. He slid the envelope across the desk. My hands felt cold when I opened it. Inside were legal documents and a letter written in Grandma Eleanor's handwriting. I picked up the first document. At first, the words blurred. Legal language has a way of making even life-changing sentences look boring. Then certain phrases came into focus. Hartwell family jewelry collection. Entirety of collection. Sole ownership. Myra Eleanor Wells. I read it again. Then again. My name sat there in black ink. Surrounded by signatures. Stamps. And a notary seal. The full Hartwell jewelry collection belonged to me. Not my mother. Not Victoria. Me. I looked up at Mr. Lawson. I don't understand. He nodded gently. The collection was appraised last year at approximately $2.3 million. I almost laughed because the number was so large, my brain refused to pick it up properly. $2.3 million sounded like something from a trust meeting, not something connected to me. Sitting in a church office with mascara, I was trying very hard not to ruin. But Victoria... I stopped. Mr. Lawson's expression told me he already knew. Your grandmother was aware that some family members had made assumptions. Assumptions. That was a polite legal word for Victoria counting pearls before the body was cold. I unfolded the letter. My dearest Myra, if you are reading this, then I am gone. And I am sorry I could not tell you this myself. I have made a decision that will anger your mother and your sister. They may say I was confused. They may say I was manipulated. They may say many things. Do not let their noise become your burden. The Hartwell collection is yours. Victoria sees these pieces as trophies. She sees old jewelry as a way to be admired, photographed, envied, and introduced at the right tables. Your mother sees them as tradition. But she has forgotten that tradition without love becomes decoration. You, my darling girl, understand memory. You notice what others overlook. You always have. Since you were a child, you saw the story inside small things. A chipped teacup, a torn photograph, a tired woman's smile, a bracelet on an old wrist. These pieces do not need someone who wants to show them off. They need someone who will preserve them. That person is you. I have watched you grow into someone remarkable. Even when others were too busy applauding the louder child, I saw your patience. I saw your work. I saw your heart. I saw the life you built without asking anyone to hand it to you. You were never invisible to me. All my love. Grandma Eleanor. By the time I finished reading, the letter was trembling in my hands. I pressed it to my chest and cried silently. The kind of crying that hurts your ribs, because you are trying not to make a sound. Mr. Lawson said nothing. Good man. Sometimes the most useful thing a person can do is keep quiet. After a minute, he placed a box of tissues on the desk. She loved you very much, he said. I wiped my eyes. I loved her too. I know. I looked down at the papers again. Does my family know? Not yet. My heart kicked once. Your grandmother requested confidentiality until you choose the proper time to disclose it, he said. The legal transfer is complete. The collection is secure in a private vault. You are under no obligation to tell them today. I pictured Victoria outside the office in her black dress, already planning which pearls would match which gown. I pictured my mother nodding along, treating the collection like Victoria's reward for existing loudly enough. I pictured my father assuming everything would go where it always went, toward Victoria. For 1 second, I wanted to walk out there and tell them, right there in the church. I wanted to watch their faces change. Then I heard Grandma's voice in my head. Not everything precious should be thrown into a room just because people are behaving badly. So I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the envelope. I won't say anything yet. I said, Mr. Lawson nodded. Your grandmother trusted your judgment. That sentence felt heavier than the inheritance. The jewelry was worth $2.3 million. That was shocking. Yes, Life-changing. Yes, but the real gift was not the money. It was the fact that Grandma Eleanor had seen me clearly enough to make a choice no one else in my family would understand. She had not given me the collection because I was the forgotten one. She had given it to me because I was the right one. When I left the office, the church was nearly empty. My parents stood near the front doors with Victoria. My sister's eyes landed on the envelope in my hand. "What's that?" she asked. I held it against my side. "Something from Grandma." Victoria's face tightened. "What kind of something?" I looked at her, then at my mother, then at my father. For years, I had answered quickly to keep everyone comfortable. This time, I did not. "Personal," I said. Victoria looked offended. As if privacy was a crime when it belonged to me. My mother gave a nervous little smile. "Well, we'll all talk soon. There are estate matters to handle." "I'm sure there are," I said. My father studied me for a moment. Maybe he noticed something different. Maybe he did not. With him, it was always hard to tell whether he was thinking deeply or just mentally checking the stock market. I walked out of Trinity Church with the envelope in my purse and Boston wind against my face. Behind me, my family was still gathered around the front steps, speaking in low voices about property, paperwork, and what they believed was owed to them. I did not correct them. Not then. For the next 6 months, I carried Grandma Eleanor's secret quietly. I returned to Los Angeles. I went back to work. I photographed brides, edited galleries, signed contracts, paid invoices, and answered emails. On the outside, my life looked the same, but something inside me had shifted. Every time Victoria called and made some little comment about my photo jobs, I thought about the letter. Every time my mother mentioned family tradition, I thought about the vault. Every time my father spoke to me, like I was still the uncertain girl standing in the kitchen with a scholarship letter, I thought about Grandma's words. "You were never invisible to me." I did not know when the truth would come out. I only knew it would. Grandma Eleanor had trusted me to decide the moment. And when Victoria's wedding invitation never came, I finally understood that the moment had been waiting for me all along. The missing invitation made more sense once I understood what Victoria thought she was about to become. 3 months after Grandma Eleanor's funeral, my mother called me on a Sunday afternoon. I remember because I was at home in Los Angeles, barefoot in my kitchen, trying to convince myself that reheated soup counted as a meal. My phone rang, and when I saw Mom's name, I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. I answered because some habits take longer to break than others. "Myra," she said, with that bright, careful tone she used when she wanted something to sound casual. "Have you heard the news?" There were several possible answers to that. In our family, news could mean a promotion, a property purchase, a charity board appointment, or somebody choosing the wrong florist and causing a 3-day emotional weather event. "No," I said. "What news?" "Victoria is engaged." I stood there, with the refrigerator door half open, holding a container of soup and feeling absolutely nothing for about 2 seconds. Then I felt everything else. "Oh," I said. "That's wonderful." It was the correct response. Not too much. Not too little. Just enough warmth to prove I had not been raised in a barn. Although honestly, a barn might have had better emotional lighting. Marcus proposed at his family's house in Connecticut. Mom continued. It was beautiful. Very elegant. His parents were there. We were there. The ring is stunning. Of course they were there. My parents had been present for Victoria's proposal, but not my graduation. That was not surprising. It still had teeth. "Marcus Thornton?" I asked. "Yes," she said, as if the name should come with a small trumpet sound. The Thorntons are a very respected family. Old Connecticut money. Real estate. Investments. Philanthropy. His mother is on several boards. There it was. The family resume. My mother could make romance sound like a merger announcement. "That sounds perfect for Victoria," I said. "It is," she said quickly. "It really is. They're planning a fall wedding in Boston. The Grand Belmont Hotel." I knew the Grand Belmont. Everybody in the wedding industry knew it. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, a ballroom large enough to host a diplomatic crisis, and staff trained to smile while rich people changed their minds every 6 minutes. That's a beautiful venue. I said, yes, and very hard to book. But Marcus's family has connections. Of course they did. My mother paused. I waited. There are pauses in family conversations that are just pauses. And then there are pauses wearing little tap shoes, dancing around the truth. It will be a large wedding, she said. About 400 guests. 400. Not small. Not intimate. Not private. 400 people, which is less a wedding and more a convention with cake. That's quite a guest list. I said, well, both families know many people. Both families. I noticed she did not say our family. Then she began talking about the dress, the flowers, the menu tasting, the rehearsal dinner, the guest accommodations, the photographers they were considering. I listened politely, giving small answers, while my soup cooled on the counter. No invitation was mentioned. Not one. When she finally hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a while, with the phone in my hand. I told myself invitations took time. I told myself maybe they had not finalized addresses. I told myself maybe, for once, they would do the decent thing without being pushed. That was my mistake. I still gave them credit they had not earned. Over the next few weeks, Victoria's engagement took over social media like a weather emergency. Every time I opened my phone, there she was. Victoria holding up her ring. Victoria kissing Marcus in front of a stone fireplace. Victoria laughing with my mother at a bridal boutique. Victoria and Marcus posing at the Grand Belmont under a caption about forever, love, and heritage. Because apparently one word for wealth was not enough. The comments poured in. So elegant. The perfect couple. A real Boston fairy tale. Your grandmother would be so proud. That last one showed up often. Every time it did. I thought about Grandma's letter tucked safely in my apartment. Victoria leaned hard into the Eleanor connection. She posted an old photo of herself standing beside Grandma at a benefit gala. Even though I remembered that night clearly, Victoria had spent most of it complaining that the dinner was boring and the guest list skewed ancient. But in the caption, she wrote about Grandma Eleanor as her guiding light. Her role model. The woman who taught her grace. I stared at that for a long time. Grace. Victoria once told a waitress at a country club that her sparkling water tasted tired. But sure. Grace. Then came the bridal brunch. I was not invited to that either. Which by then was less of a shock and more of a theme. I heard about it through Caroline Ashford. Caroline was the owner of Ashford Events, one of the most respected wedding planning agencies on the East Coast. She had known Grandma Eleanor for decades. They had served on museum committees together, argued over art donations together, and once, according to Grandma, nearly gotten thrown out of a charity auction for laughing during a speech that lasted longer than some marriages. Caroline called me one afternoon while I was in my office reviewing proofs. Myra, dear, she said, I wanted to check on you. That was not how wedding planners usually started business calls. Wedding planners usually opened with timelines, contracts, or thinly disguised panic. I'm all right, I said. Why? I attended Victoria's bridal brunch yesterday. I set down my pen. Did you? Yes, Caroline said. At the Four Seasons? Private room. 30 women. Champagne. Tiny sandwiches. A great deal of smiling that did not reach the eyes. That sounds about right. Caroline sighed. Your sister spent much of the afternoon discussing the Hartwell jewelry collection. My hand tightened around the phone. Of course she did. She told everyone she would be wearing Eleanor's pearls for the wedding. She said the collection would pass to her after the estate was settled. She described it as her inheritance. I said nothing. Caroline lowered her voice. She also implied Eleanor had promised it to her. That almost made me laugh. Not because it was funny, because the nerve of it was so large, it deserved its own zip code. She said that? I asked. She did. And my mother? Sat beside her and nodded. There it was. My mother. Nodding along to a lie that served the prettier story. I walked to the window, and looked down at downtown Los Angeles. Cars moved below. People crossed streets. Life kept doing what life does. Completely unconcerned that my sister was across the country, trying on a dead woman's legacy, like a veil. What else did she say? I asked. Caroline hesitated. Tell me. She made a comment about you. Naturally. A Victoria performance was never complete without me being used as the low shelf she stood on. She said you would not appreciate pieces like that. Caroline said that you would probably pawn them or photograph them for some odd little art project. Her words. Not mine. I closed my eyes. There are insults that hurt because they are new. And insults that hurt because they are old and tired and still somehow showing up for work. What did people say? They laughed politely. Caroline said. Some looked uncomfortable. Marcus's mother seemed very interested in the collection. I could picture it perfectly. Victoria in a perfect brunch dress. Hand resting near her engagement ring. Describing pearls and diamonds and sapphires, like they were proof of breeding. Marcus's family listening, impressed by the age of the pieces, the history, the name Hartwell attached to them. My mother sitting there, letting the story grow legs. And Victoria believed it. That was the strange part. She was not lying in the way a thief lies while sneaking out the back door. She was lying the way entitled people lie when they confuse wanting something with being promised it. In Ham Mine, Grandma's jewelry belonged to her because important things always had. The best bedroom, the newest clothes, the attention, the benefit of the doubt, the seat at every table. Why would the jewelry be any different? Victoria did not see inheritance as memory. She saw it as confirmation, a final stamp proving she had been the chosen one all along. And the closer the wedding got, the more she used that imaginary inheritance to build her new identity. She mentioned the pearls to vendors. She told the dress consultant they needed to consider the neckline because she would be wearing family heirlooms. She told the florist she wanted arrangements that would complement old European diamonds. Whatever that means. Flowers do not care about diamonds. They are flowers. But rich people can convince themselves anything is in conversation with anything if the invoice is large enough. She told Marcus's friends at an engagement dinner that the collection had been in the family for generations. She described Grandma Eleanor as a woman of taste, tradition, and strong judgment. That part was true. Victoria just failed to understand where that judgment had landed. She even contacted Mr. Hooter, Lawson, more than once. He called me after the third time. I thought you should know, he said. Your sister has been asking when the jewelry will be released. To her? I asked. She did not phrase it quite that directly. But yes. What did you tell her? That estate matters are still being handled, and that I will contact the proper party when appropriate. I smiled despite myself. Lawyers can be artists when they want to be. Did she accept that? She was displeased. I bet. She also mentioned she has commissioned a custom display case. I had to sit down. A display case? Yes. For her dressing room. There are moments when you realize someone is not just counting chickens before they hatch. They are building a luxury coupe, hosting a ribbon cutting, and selling tickets. Victoria had ordered a display case for jewelry she did not own, from a grandmother whose wishes she had not bothered to understand. That was the difference between us. I think, when I thought of Grandma Eleanor's collection, I remembered her hands, the way she held a pearl bracelet carefully. Not because it was expensive, but because her mother had worn it. I remembered the stories, the small pauses, the way she could tell you who had owned each piece and what kind of woman she had been. Victoria thought about lighting, glass shelves, magazine photos, guests admiring her. By then, the wedding machine was moving fast. There were fittings, tastings, showers, seating charts, and enough social media updates to make even the happiest engagement look like a federal campaign. My parents appeared in photos with Marcus's parents, all of them smiling like the union had been approved by several banks. Still, no invitation came. I checked the mail more often than I want to admit. That is embarrassing. But I promised the truth. So there it is. I checked the mail. I checked my email. I even checked my spam folder. which was mostly discount furniture, fake invoices, and one very determined dentist in Pasadena. Nothing. Finally, I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, a little too brightly. "Mum," I said, "I haven't received an invitation to Victoria's wedding." Silence. Not the peaceful kind. The caught kind. "I wanted to talk to you about that," she said. My stomach went still. "Victoria feels," she continued, "that it might be better if you didn't attend." I looked at the wall across from my desk. One of my photographs hung there. A bride's grandmother, holding both hands over her heart during a first dance. I had taken that shot from across the room. No one else had noticed her. "Better for whom?" I asked. "Myra. Mom. 400 guests. She just wants the day to be smooth." "Smooth. You know how these events can be?" she said. "There will be important people there. Marcus's family. Business connections. Old friends. And I would be what? A pothole?" She sighed. "Don't make this harder." I laughed once. Small and sharp. That phrase, "don't make this harder." Another family classic. Used whenever they made a decision that hurt me and wanted me to absorb it quietly so they could continue feeling decent. "I'm her sister," I said. "You've never been close." "Whose fault is that?" She did not answer. Then she said, "Victoria is under a lot of pressure." Of course. Victoria under pressure had always outranked Myra in pain. "What did Dad say?" I asked. Another pause. "He agrees it may be for the best." For the best. 3 words people use when they do not want to say cruel. I thanked my mother for telling me, because apparently some part of me had been raised by etiquette manuals and old wounds. Then I hung up. For a long time, I sat at my desk without moving. I was not invited. Not because the guest list was small. Not because the budget was tight. Not because there had been a misunderstanding. I was not invited because Victoria wanted to present a version of the family where I did not exist. Or worse, where I existed only as a sad little footnote she could use in stories about how far above me she had risen. And that was when the decision began to form. Not all at once. Not like lightning. More like a hand closing around a doorknob. Victoria wanted Grandma Eleanor's pearls without Grandma Eleanor's truth. She wanted my absence without consequence. She wanted to stand in front of 400 people and wear a legacy she had already stolen in her mind. I could not stop her from telling lies, but I could give her the truth, wrapped neatly, tied with a white ribbon, and placed exactly where she would have to open it. I knew exactly where the truth needed to go. But deciding to carry it there myself took longer than I want to admit. For 3 days, I tried to talk myself out of it. I told myself I was being foolish. I told myself Victoria had made her choice. Mom and Dad had backed her up. And the healthiest thing I could do was stay in Los Angeles. Drink decent coffee. Ignore the wedding photos. And continue living a life where nobody could remove me from a guest list. That sounded mature. It also sounded like surrender. And I had done enough of that. The silver box sat on my kitchen counter under the morning light. It was not large. Maybe the size of a small jewelry case. Simple and clean, with a white ribbon tied across the top. I had bought it from a stationery shop in Beverly Hills, which meant it cost more than a box had any moral right to cost. But if Victoria was going to open the truth in front of Boston's finest, I wanted the packaging to meet her standards. Petty? Maybe. Tasteful? Absolutely. Inside, I placed 4 things. First, a certified copy of the legal amendment showing that Grandma Eleanor had left the Hartwell jewelry collection to me. Not to Victoria. Not to my mother. To me. Second, Grandma's handwritten letter. I used a copy. Not the original. I am not careless. I may have been walking into family warfare, but I was not handing over the only letter from the woman who loved me best. Even emotional people can use common sense. Highly recommended. Third, a photograph of Grandma Eleanor and me outside the little jewelry shop near Newbury Street. The one where she had first taught me that old things were not valuable because they sparkled. They were valuable because somebody had loved them long enough to keep them safe. Fourth, a copy of the Everlight Studios contract. That was the part Victoria would not see coming. One of life's little jokes was that my sister had hired my company to photograph her wedding without knowing I owned it. She had seen our portfolio through Caroline Ashford, fallen in love with the work, and signed the agreement like a woman with excellent taste and terrible research skills. The contract was clear. Client: Victoria Wells. Studio: Everlight Studios. Owner and principal: Myra Wells. Deposit: $15,000. Non-refundable. I did not plan that part. I truly did not. I wish I could claim I had built some brilliant chessboard of revenge. But the truth is, Victoria handed me the queen, knocked over her own king, and then complained about the rules. Caroline had called me weeks earlier to explain the situation. She chose Everlight herself. Caroline said, I showed her several portfolios. Yours was the one she wanted. She doesn't know? I asked. No. You didn't tell her? Myra, Caroline said. I am a wedding planner. I manage floral creases, seating wars, drunk groomsmen, and mothers who think beige is a personality. I do not volunteer family information unless someone asks. I had laughed for the first time that week. Caroline's voice softened. Your grandmother would have appreciated the irony. She would have pretended not to. I said, oh, absolutely. Then she would have smiled into her tea. So the contract went into the box too. Not because I wanted to brag. Not really. If I had wanted my family to know about my success, I could have told them years ago. I could have mailed magazine features to my father's office. I could have sent Victoria screenshots of our revenue. I could have slipped my awards into conversations like she slipped brand names into hers. I had not done that, because I wanted them to ask. That sounds silly now. But it mattered then. I wanted one honest question. One real moment of curiosity. One phone call, where my mother said, tell me about your work, and then actually listened. One dinner where my father did not treat photography like a phase I had stubbornly refused to outgrow. They never asked. Victoria did not ask either. She only assumed. And when people assume you are small, sometimes the truth has to arrive in a box. The night before my flight, I barely slept. I packed carefully. A navy dress. A douce de rose dress. Simple heels. Makeup. Phone charger. Documents. And the silver box. I checked the box 3 separate times. Because apparently once you decide to cross the country with a legal and emotional grenade, you become very concerned about tissue paper placement. At 2 in the morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea I did not drink. The apartment was quiet. Los Angeles glowed outside the window. All streetlights and passing headlights. I thought about Grandma Eleanor and wondered what she would say if she saw me now. Part of me feared she would be disappointed. Not because the documents were wrong. They were real. Not because Victoria deserved to keep lying. She did not. But Grandma had been graceful in a way I was still learning. She could correct a person without raising her voice. And somehow they walked away feeling like they had been sentenced by a judge in pearls. I was not there yet. I was tired. Hued. Angry in a clean, focused way. Then I remembered something she told me when I was a teenager. After Victoria made a joke at dinner about my little camera obsession, Grandma had leaned close and said, there is no virtue in letting people rewrite the truth just because they prefer the lie. That settled it. I was not going to Boston to scream. I was not going to interrupt the ceremony. I was not going to storm the aisle, point fingers, or give one of those speeches people clap for in movies but would absolutely record on their phones in real life. I was going to deliver a wedding gift. That was all. A gift from a sister who had been erased. A gift from a granddaughter who had been trusted. A gift from the truth, wrapped in silver paper. My flight left early in the morning. At LAX. I moved through security with the box in my carry-on. For one nervous second, I imagined an agent pulling it out and asking why I was traveling with estate documents, a family photograph, and what looked like proof that my sister had accidentally hired me. Try explaining that at 6 in the morning while a businessman behind you sighs like you personally delayed capitalism. But nobody stopped me. The plane lifted into the pale California sky, and I watched Los Angeles shrink beneath the wing. For most of the flight, I did not read, sleep, or watch a movie. I just sat there with my hands folded, feeling the distance close. 3,000 miles. That is a long way to travel for people who said they did not want you. It is also a long way to travel to finally stop agreeing with them. When we landed in Boston, the air felt different the moment I stepped outside. Cooler, sharper, familiar in a way that made my chest tighten before I could prepare for it. I checked into a small hotel near the airport, not the Grand Belmont. I was not about to stay under the same roof as my family and pretend the front desk clerk could not smell emotional disaster. I showered, fixed my hair, and put on the dusty rose dress. I chose it because it was soft but not weak, elegant but not loud, appropriate for a wedding and for leaving one. Then I stood in front of the mirror. I looked like myself. That mattered. Not like the awkward younger sister Victoria described. Not like the failure my parents imagined. Not like some bitter woman coming to beg for entry into a room that never deserved her. Just myself. Myra Wells. Business owner. Photographer. Granddaughter. Sister. Whether Victoria liked it or not, I placed the silver box in my purse and called a car. The ride to the Grand Belmont took me through parts of Boston I had known since childhood. Brick buildings. Narrow streets. Trees beginning to turn with fall color. People in coats walking quickly. Coffee in hand. Faces set against the wind. Boston has always looked like it has somewhere important to be, and disapproves of your shoes. The hotel came into view just before 4 in the afternoon. The Grand Belmont stood tall and bright. Its entrance lined with flowers, black cars, and guests stepping out in formal clothes. Everything looked expensive. Everything looked planned. Everything looked exactly like the world Victoria wanted to enter as Mrs. Thornton. For a moment, my hand tightened around the purse strap. I could leave. The thought came suddenly and clearly. I could tell the driver to keep going. I could go back to the airport, fly home, lock the documents away, and let Victoria enjoy her beautiful lie for one more night. I could protect myself from whatever came next. Then I saw a woman in a pale gown laughing as she walked through the hotel doors, holding a gift wrapped in gold paper. A guest. One of 400. And I thought, she belongs in that room more than I do? No. That was the answer. Not loud. No dramatic. Just no. I paid the driver, stepped out, and walked into the hotel. The lobby was stunning in the way luxury hotels are stunning when someone has spent enough money to make comfort feel slightly intimidating. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, tall floral arrangement, staff moving with quiet speed, guests everywhere. Smiling, greeting, drifting toward the ballroom. I followed the signs for the Wells-Thornton wedding. At the reception table, 2 young women in black dresses looked up with practiced smiles. "Good afternoon," one said. "Name, please?" "Myra Wells." I replied. "I'm the bride's sister." Her smile stayed put. At first, then came the page turning. The second look. The quiet consultation with the other woman. The slow change in her face when professional warmth became professional discomfort. "I'm sorry, Ma'am," she said. "I'm not seeing your name. Could you check again?" "Of course." She checked again. No Myra Wells. There was Harold Wells, Patricia Wells, Victoria Wells. An entire section of Thorntons. Guests from Boston, Connecticut, New York, Palm Beach, and God knows where else. But not me, the bride's only sister. I nodded slowly. There it was. The final confirmation. I could have accepted my mother's phone call and stayed home. But standing there in the hotel, seeing my name truly absent in black and white, did something important. It removed the last soft excuse I had been holding for them. They had not forgotten. They had deleted. The receptionist looked genuinely sorry. "Would you like me to contact the wedding coordinator?" "No," I said. "I'll call my sister." I stepped away and dialed Victoria. She answered with irritation already loaded in her voice. "What?" "I'm at the Grand Belmont," I said. "My name isn't on the guest list." A pause, then that small, cold laugh. "I know," she said. "You weren't invited." Even expecting it did not make it painless. "I came to give you a gift." "A gift?" she said. "Myra, This is embarrassing. You need to leave before people notice. People notice more than you think. What is that supposed to mean? Nothing. I said, enjoy your wedding. Do not cause a scene. She snapped. I mean it. Not today. I looked toward the gift table. I won't. Then I hung up before she could. My hands were steady as I walked to the table. There were towers of expensive presents. Envelopes with thick paper. Shiny ribbons. Crystal boxes. Silver bags. All of it arranged, like an altar, to good taste and disposable income. I found a small space near the edge. I set the silver box down. For 1 second, my fingers rested on the ribbon. I thought of Grandma Eleanor. I thought of my 10th birthday. I thought of my empty graduation seats. I thought of every time Victoria had called me nothing, and my parents had let the word stand. Then I let go. The receptionist came closer. Are you sure you don't want to stay? She asked softly. I gave her a polite smile. No. Thank you, I said. Some gifts say more when you're not in the room. Then I turned away from the ballroom, walked through the lobby, and left my family behind, with the truth waiting on the table. I left the hotel before anyone inside understood that the smallest gift on the table was the only one that mattered. My car pulled away from the Grand Belmont, while the doorman was still helping guests out of black sedans and pointing them toward the ballroom. I sat in the back seat with my hands folded in my lap, watching the hotel shrink through the rear window. I had expected to feel shaky, maybe guilty, maybe afraid. Instead, I felt still, not calm exactly. Calm is what people say when they have made peace with something. I had not made peace with anything. I had simply stopped carrying everyone else's comfort on my back, like it was my assigned family chore. By the time I reached Logan Airport, the reception would have been in full swing. I checked my bag, passed through security, and found a seat near my gate with a paper cup of coffee that tasted like it had been brewed during the first Bush administration. I drank it anyway. At that point, caffeine was caffeine, and I was not in a position to be picky. My phone sat face down on the small table beside me. For almost an hour, nothing happened. Inside the Grand Belmont, the wedding was doing exactly what expensive weddings do. Smiling people were drinking champagne. Waiters in white gloves were carrying plates. Nobody would remember eating. My parents were probably glowing at the head table. Marcus's family was probably receiving compliments like shareholders after a good quarter. And Victoria was exactly where she loved to be. In the center, the ballroom had been decorated in ivory, gold, and soft blush pink. Tall arrangements of white roses and hydrangeas stood on each table. Crystal chandeliers hung above everyone, like the hotel wanted to remind the guests that even the ceiling had money. There were 400 people there, maybe more if you counted the staff, the orchestra, and the relatives who came mostly for the open bar and free gossip. Every family has a few. Do not pretend yours does not. Victoria sat beside Marcus in her custom Vera Wang gown, smiling so wide, it probably required facial endurance training. Diamonds glittered at her ears and wrist. But not Grandma Eleanor's diamonds. Not Grandma Eleanor's pearls. Not the Hartwell collection she had spent months describing as if she had already been born wearing it. Still, that did not stop her from talking. During cocktail hour, I was told later, she moved from group to group, accepting congratulations and sliding the jewelry collection into conversations as smoothly as other people mentioned the weather. Oh, Grandma's pearls will be restored soon. The collection has been in the family for generations. I want to preserve her legacy properly. Properly. Victoria's definition of properly usually meant photographed, admired, insured, and placed somewhere people could ask about it. By the time dinner was served, enough guests had heard about the Hartwell collection to believe they were witnessing the union of two grand families, complete with old jewels, old money, and old manners. Nobody knew the foundation under that story had a crack running straight through it. Not yet. After dinner, the master of ceremonies took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, with the cheerful confidence of a man paid to sound excited about a timeline, "before we move to the cake cutting, Victoria and Marcus would like to open a few special gifts from family and close friends." There was polite applause. Victoria lit up. Of course she did. My sister loved gifts. More specifically, she loved opening gifts while people watched her receive them. It combined her two favorite hobbies: attention and ownership. A staff member rolled the gift table closer to the front. The presents were arranged beautifully: glossy boxes, satin ribbons, heavy envelopes, Tiffany blue, Hermes orange, cream paper with gold seals. And near the edge sat my small silver box with its white ribbon. At first, Victoria did not notice it. She opened a crystal vase from a family friend, sterling silver candlesticks from Marcus's aunt, a set of engraved champagne flutes from someone who clearly believed newlyweds were always one toast away from emotional stability. Each time, Victoria smiled, thanked the giver, and held the item just long enough for everyone to admire it. Then her hand landed on the silver box. She paused when she saw the card. To Victoria. From your sister, Myra. A few people nearby leaned in. Maybe they knew enough family history to understand that my name did not usually appear in public moments, unless Victoria needed someone to compare herself to. Victoria gave a small laugh. Oh, she said, loud enough for the front tables to hear. A gift from Myra. My mother's expression changed. My father looked over. Marcus turned his head slightly. Victoria lifted the box as if it might stain her gloves. She couldn't even be bothered to attend properly. She added, smiling for the room. But she sensed something. There was a little uncomfortable laughter. The kind people give when someone important says something mean, and they are not sure whether they are allowed to disapprove. Marcus leaned toward her. Victoria. What? She said lightly. I'm sure it's sweet. She untied the ribbon. I wish I could say she sensed danger, that some instinct warned her to stop, but entitlement is not known for its survival skills. She opened that box with the confidence of a woman who had never been denied anything that truly mattered. The lid came off. Her smile stayed in place for 1 second. Then it slipped. Inside was the envelope. She pulled out the first document, unfolded it, and scanned the top. Legal language. Notary seal. Grandma Eleanor's name. My name. Her eyes moved faster, then slower, then stopped. The room did not go silent all at once. Silence spreads in a ballroom. First, one table notices, then another. Then people turn their heads because rich people may love privacy. But they do not love missing a scene. Marcus leaned closer. What is it? Victoria did not answer. Her hands had started to shake. My mother stood. Victoria? Victoria turned the page. Read another line. And her face went pale, under all that professional bridal makeup. No, she whispered. Marcus reached for the document. Let me see. She jerked it away. No, this is fake. That word carried. Fake. My father was already moving toward her. My mother followed quickly, her heels clicking across the floor, like punctuation marks in a very expensive sentence. What's fake? My mother asked. Victoria thrust the document toward her. Patricia Wells read it. I was not there, but I know my mother well enough to picture the exact moment her face changed. First confusion, then rejection, then fear. Because she knew enough about legal documents to understand a notary seal was not decoration. This can't be right, she said. My father took the paper from her hands. He read it once, then again. The Hartwell family jewelry collection. Appraised at approximately $2.3 million. Transferred in full to Myra Eleanor Wells. Sole ownership. My name, not Victoria's. A murmur moved through the ballroom. Is that the jewelry she mentioned earlier? I thought she said it was hers. 2.3 million? Victoria's head snapped toward the sound. Stop whispering. That, naturally, made everyone whisper more. Then the letter fell out. Grandma Eleanor's letter. It landed near the hem of Victoria's gown. Cream paper against polished wood. Marcus picked it up before anyone could stop him. Don't, Victoria said, but he was already reading. His expression changed first. Not shock. Disappointment. A deeper kind. The kind that arrives when you realize the person beside you has been selling you a story and charging full price. He read aloud. Not loudly, but enough for the nearest tables to hear. Victoria sees these pieces as trophies, Myra sees them as memories. My mother closed her eyes. My father looked down at the floor. Victoria's mouth opened. No words came out. That may have been a first. Marcus kept reading, his voice quieter now. She was the only one who loved me for who I was, not what I owned. That sentence finished the room. People stopped pretending not to listen. Victoria grabbed for the letter. Give me that. Marcus did not hand it over. Is this her handwriting? He asked my father. My father's face had gone stiff. Yes, he said. One word. That was all it took. Victoria looked around wildly. She was old. She was confused. Myra must have manipulated her. A woman's voice answered from the side of the room. No. She was not confused. Caroline Ashford stepped forward. She was dressed in a deep navy gown, composed and elegant, with the calm authority of a woman who had managed enough weddings to know when the flowers were not the problem. The room parted for her. I witnessed Eleanor sign that amendment. Caroline said, I was present when she discussed her wishes with Mr. Blang. Lawson. She knew exactly what she was doing. Victoria stared at her. Caroline, don't. Caroline's face softened, but her voice did not. Your grandmother loved both of you, but she saw you clearly. That was worse than an insult. Insults give people something to fight. Truth leaves them standing there with no furniture in the room. My mother whispered, Caroline, please. Caroline looked at her. Patricia, Eleanor tried to tell you for years. My mother flinched. Then Marcus noticed the final paper inside the box. What's that? He asked. Victoria looked down. At the bottom, folded neatly under the tissue paper, was the Everlight Studios contract. She picked it up with fingers that no longer looked steady enough to hold a champagne flute. The header was clear. Everlight Studios Wedding Services Agreement. Her eyes dropped to the signature page. Client, Victoria Wells. Owner and principal, Myra Wells. Deposit, $15,000. Non-refundable. The color drained from her face all over again. No, she said. No. 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 Marcus took the paper. He read it. Then he looked at his bride. You hired her company? I didn't know. Victoria said quickly. You told me she was struggling. Victoria's breathing changed. You told me she was unstable. Marcus continued. Each word controlled. You told me she could barely keep a job? People heard that too. Of course they did. At this point, the ballroom had become a courtroom with better flowers. One of the photographers standing near the wall shifted uncomfortably. She was young, professional, and very much wishing she had chosen landscape photography. Marcus turned toward her. Do you work for Everlight Studios? She swallowed. Yes. Sid. For Myra Wells? Yes. How successful is the company? The poor woman looked like she wanted to disappear into her camera bag. Everlight is one of the top wedding photography studios on the West Coast, she said carefully. Miss Wells is our owner. We photograph luxury weddings across the country. A man near the front table stood suddenly. Wait, he said. Myra Wells? Everlight photographed my daughter's wedding in Malibu. She's excellent. Another guest turned. They did the Whitmore Foundation Gala? Someone else said. I heard they're booked almost 2 years out. The whispers changed tone. Not scandal now. Recognition. Victoria stood frozen at the center of the ballroom, while the version of me she had invented collapsed in front of 400 witnesses. Not because I shouted, not because I argued, because the facts had better timing than I ever could. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. What else have you lied about? He asked. Victoria tried to answer, but all she managed was my name. Myra did this? My father finally spoke, his voice low. No, he said. Your grandmother did. That sentence hit harder than anything in the box. Victoria reached for her phone then. I know because that was when mine started ringing at the airport. Once, twice. Then again, her name filled my screen. I watched it light up beside my bad coffee and let it ring. Back in the ballroom, my sister was calling the one person she had made sure could not enter the room. And for the first time in my life, I did not answer. I watched Victoria's name flash on my phone until the screen went dark. And for once, I let silence do the work I used to do for everyone else. Then came my mother. Then my father. Then Victoria again. By the time the gate agent announced boarding for my flight to Los Angeles, I had missed 47 calls. 47. That was more times than my family had called, just to check on me in the last several years combined. But apparently nothing improves communication skills like public embarrassment in a ballroom full of rich people. The messages came in fast. My mother wrote, "Call me immediately." My father wrote, "This is unacceptable. We need to discuss what you've done." Victoria wrote, "You ruined my life?" Then, a minute later, Victoria wrote, "Pick up. You coward." That one almost made me laugh. I had flown 3,000 miles, walked into the hotel where I had been deliberately erased, left the truth on a table, and walked away without screaming. But sure, I was the coward. Family logic should come with a warning label. I turned my phone off before boarding. The flight home was quiet. I sat by the window and watched Boston disappear beneath the clouds. I expected guilt to show up. It did not. Sadness did. But it was older than the wedding. It had been sitting with me since childhood, since forgotten birthdays and empty graduation seats and every dinner where Victoria's future mattered more than my present. I had not destroyed anything. I had only stopped protecting a lie. Somewhere over the Midwest, I opened the Notes app on my phone and wrote one sentence. I will not close the door, but I will not hold it open forever. That became my boundary. Not a speech, not a threat, just a line I could live behind. When I landed in Los Angeles, the sun was coming up. The airport was full of half-awake travelers dragging suitcases, children whining about snacks, and business people already typing like the world would collapse if they did not answer one more email before breakfast. It felt strangely normal. The world had not stopped, because my family had finally been forced to look at itself. I went home, showered, and tried to sleep. That lasted about 2 hours. My assistant, Yenna, called me around 9. "Myra," she said carefully, "have you checked social media?" "No." "You need to." That is never a comforting sentence. Nobody says you need to check social media because a nice photo of a sandwich is waiting. I opened the link she sent. There it was. A video from the wedding. Someone had filmed the whole scene. Not all of it, but enough. Victoria opening the silver box, her face changing. Marcus reading the letter. Caroline confirming the will. Guests whispering. Someone saying my company's name. Someone else saying I owned Everlight Studios. The caption read, "Rich bride finds out her loser sister is actually the millionaire who owns her wedding photographer." Classy? No. Effective? Unfortunately, yes. The video already had 2 million views. By lunch, it had 3 million. By dinner, it had crossed 5 million. The comments were endless. Grandma knew exactly what she was doing. The quiet sister always has the receipts. Imagine insulting the person who owns your wedding vendors. That bride got fact-checked in a Vera Wang gown. I did not post the video. I did not ask anyone to film. I did not want strangers turning my family pain into entertainment while eating cereal. But the internet is like a raccoon with a phone. Once it finds something shiny, good luck getting it back. Everlight Studios received hundreds of inquiries in one day. Jenna had to set up an auto-reply. Reporters emailed. Podcasts reached out. A morning show producer asked if I wanted to share my truth. I deleted that one immediately. My truth had already done enough traveling for the week. 3 days later, my mother came to my office. She looked smaller when she walked into Everlight Studios. Not physically. She was still Patricia Wells in her silk blouse, pearl earrings, and perfect hair, but her certainty was gone. She stood in the lobby, staring at the framed magazine covers on the wall. The awards, the photographs, the office full of people working for the daughter she had treated like a footnote. "This is yours?" she asked when I came out. "Yes." "All of it?" "Yes." She swallowed. "You never told us?" I looked at her for a long moment. "You never asked?" That sentence landed hard. I saw it in her face. I brought her into my office and closed the door. She sat across from me, hands folded tightly in her lap. "At first," she said, "I thought you humiliated your sister. I wasn't even in the room. You know what I mean? Yes, I said. And I know what you don't want to mean. Her eyes filled with tears. She lied. My mother whispered. About you? About the jewelry. About what Eleanor wanted. And I helped her because it was easier. I did not rush to comfort her. That was another old job I had resigned from. She wiped her eyes. Victoria was always louder. She demanded more. You were quiet. You seemed fine. I was not fine. I said. I was trained to be convenient. My mother covered her mouth, for the first time in my life. She did not correct me. She did not tell me I was being dramatic. She did not explain Victoria's stress, my father's work, or the family reputation. She just cried. Real crying. Messy crying. The kind my mother would normally consider unacceptable without a locked bathroom door. We failed you, she said. I failed you. I believed she meant it. That did not make everything better. An apology is not a magic eraser. It is a doorbell. Someone rings it, and you decide whether to open the door. How far? And for how long? I hear you, I said. She nodded, like she understood. That was all I could give. Before she left, she told me Marcus had postponed the honeymoon. Victoria had been asked to take a leave from work until the video storm cooled down. The Thornton family was furious. Not just because of the public scene, but because Victoria had lied to Marcus about me. She had told him I was unstable, unsuccessful, and basically cut off for my own good. That part hurt more than I expected, not because Marcus believed it. He did not know me, but because Victoria had not just ignored me, she had built a whole ugly story in the space where I should have been. A week later, my father sent a letter, 3 pages, handwritten. I read it twice, then put it in a drawer. He apologized for dismissing my work, for missing my graduation, for letting Victoria define the family's attention. He wrote that he had mistaken my quietness for strength, when sometimes it had been loneliness. That line stayed with me. I have not written back yet. Maybe I will. Maybe I need more time. Both can be true. As for Victoria, she did not apologize right away. Of course she did not. Victoria did not know how to enter a room without bringing pride as a carry-on bag. Her first voicemail was angry. Her second was worse. By the fourth, she sounded tired. A month later, she sent a message. I'm trying to understand. That was it. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Just, I'm trying to understand. Old me would have hated that. Old me would have wanted more. Demanded more. Needed the full apology before I could breathe. New me looked at the message and thought, that may be all she can honestly offer today. So I wrote back. Keep trying. That was not forgiveness. It was a boundary with a porch light. 6 months have passed since the wedding. The viral video faded. Because the internet always finds a new person to chase, Everlight Studios is still thriving. My mother calls once a week now. The conversations are awkward, but real. She asks about my work. I answer. She listens. Sometimes that still surprises me. The Hartwell jewelry collection is safe. I loaned several pieces to the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, with a plaque honoring Grandma Eleanor's legacy. The rest remains protected, until I decide what comes next. I did not want those pieces hidden in a dressing room display case. I wanted them treated like history, because that is what they are. And Victoria? She and Marcus are in counseling. I do not know if their marriage will survive. That is not my decision, my burden, or my assignment. I hope she changes. Not because she deserves an easy ending, but because becoming honest is the only way she will ever stop being so afraid of losing status. People ask me if it felt good. The truth? Not exactly. It felt necessary. There is a difference. Revenge burns hot and leaves you hungry. Truth is quieter. It does not always feel satisfying at first, because it asks you to stop performing, stop begging, and stop explaining your value to people committed to misunderstanding you. I did not leave that silver box to destroy my sister. I left it because she had built a public lie on top of my absence. And I was done being the empty space in her story. If there is one thing I have learned, it is this. Being overlooked by your family can make you question your own worth, especially when the people ignoring you are the ones who were supposed to know you first. But their blindness is not your identity. Their favoritism is not your measure. Their version of you is not the final draft. You are allowed to set boundaries with people you love. You are allowed to stop chasing parents who only turn around when something goes wrong. You are allowed to protect what was entrusted to you. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is not storm into the room. Sometimes it is leaving the truth on the table and walking away before they ask you to make it smaller. Grandma Eleanor gave me a camera when I was 10 years old because she believed I could see what others missed. It took me 28 years to realize she had also taught me to see myself, not as the forgotten daughter, not as Victoria's awkward little sister, not as the person waiting outside the ballroom, as Myra Wells, a woman with a life she built, a name she owns, and a door she no longer holds open for people who only knock when they need something. And for the first time, that is enough. The deepest lesson in this story is that a person's worth is not decided by how their family treats them. Some people spend years trying to be noticed, respected, or loved by the very people who should have seen them first. But at some point, peace does not come from begging for a seat at the table. It comes from realizing you are allowed to build your own table. Myra's strength was not in destroying Victoria. Her strength was in refusing to keep protecting a lie. She did not scream, chase, or demand approval. She simply let the truth stand on its own. That is a powerful lesson for anyone, especially older viewers who have seen how favoritism, silence, and family pride can wound people for decades. A quiet child still needs love. A strong person still needs kindness. And a family member who never complains may be the one carrying the most pain. In real life, forgiveness can be beautiful, but boundaries are necessary. Love your family when you can, but do not lose yourself trying to earn love from people who only notice you when they need something. Sometimes choosing yourself is not selfish. Sometimes it is the first honest step toward healing.